Danielle, would you please read the statement of adequate notice?
In accordance with Chapter 231, PL 1975, the Open Public Meetings Act, adequate notice of this meeting has been provided as required, specifying the time and location, with such notice as being sent to the Asbury Park Press and the Times of Trenton, posted on the Municipal Public Notice Meeting Bulletin Board, and filed with the Township Clerk.
Okay, thanks. Would everyone please stand and join us for a flag salute? I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thanks, everybody. Danielle, would you please call the roll?
Chairman Newman?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Cato?
Yes.
Committeeman Ziner?
Yes.
Committeewoman Zabrowski?
Yes.
Mr. Beck?
Yes.
Mr. Lambros?
Yes.
And for the record, Mr. Pepe, Mr. Copy, Ms. Sinha, and Mr. Carino are not here, although we are expecting one of them.
Okay, but in the meantime, please confirm we have a quorum.
We do have a quorum.
Okay, thanks. Before we get started with our substantive agenda, if there's anyone that would like to approach the board with any comments on something that's not otherwise scheduled for discussion, this is an opportunity for that. Seeing none, we'll close the public comment portion and move through our agenda. First item is approval of the minutes, which Danielle had distributed. This was our April 10th minutes. Does anyone have any comments or suggestions, or is there a motion to approve? Okay, I'll move it. All right, thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or suggestions?
Mr. Chairman, the record shall reveal that Mr. Copy has arrived and joined the board.
Okay. So, Mr. Codby, welcome. We're just about to entertain a motion for the April 10th minutes. So unless you had any comments, we're going to proceed?
No.
Okay. Excellent answer. Thank you.
Huh?
That's a good answer. Right, you're doing great today. Danielle, would you please call the roll?
Chairman Newman?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Cato?
Yes.
Committeeman Ziner? Committeewoman Zabrowski?
Yes.
Mr. Beck?
Yes.
Mr. Lambros?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Right, no resolutions. So, one second. Oh, okay. Yeah, just got it. Okay. All right, so next thing on our agenda is King's Den Lounge LLC, Block 24, Lot 1, 2 Conover Road. Is there someone here on behalf of the applicant?
Do I stand or sit?
Kind of your preference?
I've been here in 20 years.
Yeah, we've changed a lot. Actually, it's my 20-year anniversary, so.
So it's probably 30 years.
Yeah.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Salvatore Alfieri on behalf of the applicant.
Mr. Chairman, this is a request for submission waivers. There is no notice required to the public on this. The applicant has requested some waivers from the submission requirements. Esther Shafai has given you a letter dated April 22nd indicating what the completeness waivers are. One of the issues that are set forth is in paragraph 3B. It talks about proposed use of a band area may require a D variance. In that instance, the board needs to clarify, because if it's a D variance that's required, this board doesn't have the authority to grant waivers. That would go exclusively to the zoning board of adjustment.
And I could respond to that. There would be no band area that's, so that would be eliminated from the plan, and therefore eliminate the jurisdictional issue.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Alfer. I just want to turn to our professionals and make sure we're on the same page. So the amendment to the application on the fly, so to speak, is to remove the band area. Does that resolve jurisdictional issues with this application?
It does, but there's still a lot of items they haven't provided. But the other big item was how many seats and tables are in this place.
Is
Still
that,
don't have it.
are those part of the waiver request, or is that just information
Well,
you need
it's
to-
gonna kick in a variance, book variance. They're
And
not applying for any variance.
It may also trigger major site plan approval if the increase in parking required is greater than 5. It shifts it from minor site plan, which is what is proposed now, to a major site plan.
So Mike, it sounds like,
And I assume that's a different checklist.
Correct.
yeah, so it feels like we may not have the jurisdictional issue of the right board, but it feels like if it's, the application may not be the applicable application.
Just about every waiver they're asking for, they're saying they're proposing no outdoor improvements, no outside, nothing. So they don't want to give you lighting plan, landscaping plan. They don't want to give you the site survey or anything. But again, the use that was there was a daytime use. It was, somebody was selling brick pavers or something. Now they're talking about nighttime seating. So I don't know how many lights are out there. We may need more landscaping. We may need more parking. I don't know how many seats are there.
Well, so I just want to look at this one step at a time. If the jurisdictional issue is, seems to be resolved, the next level is, do we have the right application? How do we make that determination?
I don't think we do it because there's gonna be at least, they're showing 20 seats. Based on the 20 seats, they have enough parking, they don't have to change anything. But there's room for 30 more seats in there. And they do say seating area, but they don't show the seats. So every 2-3 seats requires a parking space.
So let's just, so other than seating versus parking, what other items?
I still think we need landscaping and lighting out there.
Environmental impact also.
Again, if they're doing outside work, depending how close, there was a conservation easement granted with the previous application, so, it could be a 2-page report saying they don't need anything.
Are the items that you're talking about, landscape lighting, seating versus parking, are those part of the waiver requests?
Yes.
For submission items?
That's
Yeah,
part of the waivers, yeah, I circled 6 circles, they asked for like 30 waivers, but most of them, I have no problem with it. The ones I circled, I think they should provide those things.
Okay, so
Why
let's,
don't we have a current survey? Why don't we show the 200 radius people around this property?
well, hey, Matt, let's go through it, one at a time, the items that you would like to provide guidance to the board as to, let's talk about those items that you do not feel should be waived. I just want to start with this waiver request list that I have in front of me, is just the same list everyone's looking at? Okay, so it is a 2-page list?
There's 2 pages, I circled the ones that,
Yeah, I don't have the circle, so that's okay. We can, I'm happy to go the long
it
way.
was attached to my report.
Yeah, but let's go through them one at a time, because
Sure.
although it may not be a problem to
Sure.
you, one of the board members might want to poke at it. So, unless the applicant has any suggested other method, I'd like to go through all of the waiver items and let's knock them off or arm wrestle through them.
However you want. First of all, the board has the ability to ask for whatever it thinks it needs to intelligently review an application, so we really can't debate what you think you need. So, but we're willing to go through it if you want, and we'll provide a justification for the waiver if you want to hear one.
Can I just ask a question?
Sure.
So since this is a change of use and a new site, why wouldn't he normally go and propose a whole new site plan with everything that would require?
Well, and Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, I think that's where the various waivers are going to take us, that if we determine that several or whatever, some of the waivers don't qualify, it may be that that's where the applicant has to go. But their position, as I understand it, is you may be right, but if we waive all these things, then we don't need to get there, if the board waives all these things.
Fair enough.
So that's their request, so we'll
Right, and just,
slug through it.
just the underlying reason that we've asked for the waivers is the site exists. We weren't proposing any site improvements, so that's why we've asked for all these waivers. But again, if the engineer or the board requires a landscape plan or a lighting plan, then we...
Well, usually a change of use, we look at it as a whole new application and we require applicants to provide all the documentation to create a condition of approval.
All right, so Matt, I'm gonna just roll through them, and I see the circles ones are on the screen.
Yeah, because a lot of the other items in the checklist talks about a subdivision. So this is not a subdivision, so that's why none of those really apply here, so.
All right, so the first one is waiver sought for current signed and sealed property survey. And you're, obviously, that's a concern for you, so what do you think?
We don't have a survey. The survey submitted was from 2014 or something, which is before new improvements were put in with the previous application.
Okay,
So there's, I'm not sure what's there.
okay, got it. That sounds reasonable. Let's just keep going through it, and at least I will make my own notes as
You wanna
to.
let them respond? Make
Oh,
their point?
yeah, Mr. Alfieri, you're welcome to respond.
Again, the same response is going to be for every waiver request, and so not to waste the board's time, we're proposing no site improvements today. So, but again, if you think you need a survey or a landscape plan or something else, we're going to have to do it.
Okay. So I'm gonna just keep going. Certification blocks required by map filing law, not necessarily a site plan application.
Yeah, again, it's not a subdivision, so those don't even apply here, so.
Okay, got it.
No monumentation, again, that's a map filing law, we don't need it.
Okay.
And C11 is same as B, really. We want a date of the latest current property survey. We don't have it. Again, we should have it because the survey is 10 years old and doesn't show what's there.
Okay, and Matt, I'm gonna let you drive, because I see you don't have circles on these, so just give us where you think we are.
Then we go to C22. Usually you have a site plan. There is a minor site plan here, and they usually show the 200 radius residents around this property. They don't show it. I don't know why we couldn't show that. There's a list, but it's separately submitted.
So the list should be incorporated into the actual site plan?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
And there's also, go next page, ordinance requires an EIS. And again, this comes down, to me, they need to provide how many seats are there, because that's gonna kick in the parking. The parking's gonna kick in bigger site plan, which may become a major site plan. We need lighting, we need landscaping, because I'm not sure what's there.
Hey, I just want to jump back to C32. So the applicant is confirming there are no exterior improvements?
Proposed.
Right, as part of the eventual application?
Correct.
Okay. What about signage?
There's an existing sign there that they're going to just change the face.
Okay. So why is C33 not bothering you, Matt? Why wouldn't
The
they?
septic's already there. There's already a septic system.
Okay.
Mr. Schifani, would that need to be
When we
updated?
approve it, if we approve it, there'll be a condition that, Board of Health. has
Board of
to-
Health.
Okay.
Can I just ask a question with the sign? I thought I had seen that Nick had issued a violation for the sign, that they changed it before it was
I
approved.
think they changed the sign.
That's what, I
I'm
thought
not
I
sure.
saw the violation in our packet that we
It's
got.
covered now.
It's covered.
Yeah, because it was changed without getting any
Without getting
approvals, yes.
approvals,
Just one other minor question. This is an appropriate use for this zone?
It's a permitted use, yes. Category 1 or 2 restaurant.
Category 2 restaurant.
If they take away that band area, which could potentially have been an event space, which is not permitted, but they've said they're taking it away. So the coffee restaurant is permitted.
Well, talking about 36, identification of usable, buildable critical areas, is that not an issue because there is none? Why isn't that a question?
I thought there was we have that area. We have that on the application, actually.
Oh, all right, it's already there, okay. Wait, so why are they asking for a waiver if it's already there?
Again, they listed almost everything there. I'm not sure. Most of these don't apply. That's why I circled the ones that I think is relevant.
Okay, so you took us down to D5, which was the EIS.
EIS.
Okay, I certainly agree with that.
Depending on what improvements happen out there, or they may wanna give you, they should, I mean, a lot of time environmental commission asks for one,
Mhm.
something simple.
Sure, I agree.
When was the last time a wetland study was done in the area?
I don't remember. I mean, again, 10 years ago, when they came back, when they were here for that application for the sale of paver blocks or whatever it was,
Yeah, Barrett Outdoors.
they did a LOI and there's a conservation easement on their property.
Yeah.
Okay, so where in this process do we talk about the status of the LOI being expired or not expired or extended?
We already put them in a conservation easement, so
Okay.
it's already a conservation easement. We don't really have them to
Okay.
start all over again because it's not gonna happen.
Okay, so
So it's registered.
on the next category of minor site plan,
Again, landscaping plan and lighting plan. I have no idea what's there. There's a lot of grass out there. There should be more landscaping. Lighting, if you have people come in at night for coffee or whatever is going on in here, I don't know where the lights are or not.
okay. So, hang on a second.
But again, to begin with, we need to know the total number of seats in here, because they're showing 22 seats. Looks like there's room for 60 or 70 seats in there, but they just say seating area, they don't tell you how many seats. I don't know why.
And your concern is that
More parking, new
more
site plan.
seats, more parking, and that'll change the,
Change everything.
the type of application before us.
There's also a considerable amount of paved area outside of it, which I think is a result of the previous tenant. So if there's proposed parking or outside use out there, that could have an effect on the site as well.
Yes.
Lighting, landscaping, and parking.
Okay, so from the, to the applicant, Mr. Alfieri, so we have, I'll just call it a half a dozen, I'm rounding, items that you could see the board is not inclined, based on input from our consultants, is not inclined to waive, but I do want to hear from you as to how you would address the question of seating and its relationship to parking.
Well, I guess the concern is, since it's not a public hearing, I don't know how much detail we can get into the operations. I only know that we've listed that there'll be 19 patrons, 2 to 3 employees. That's what's listed. What your professionals are saying is that there's a bigger area within the building, so how do you know we're gonna limit those seats to 19, and what happens if you have room for 60?
Plan says seating area, but
Yeah.
they don't show the seats.
So, we're gonna have to address that comment to make sure that your professionals are satisfied with the answer.
Okay, and right, Matt makes it easy, point that, right, there's this large seating area with 4 tables in the corner. It's either a seating area or it's not a seating area, and if it's not a seating area, then what is it? But, okay, so, Mike, what action or formal action should we consider in terms of a motion or procedurally?
I think you have to decide whether to grant these 6 waiver requests, or whether to grant some of them, deny others, or whether to deny all of them.
And just to clarify, there are other waiver requests that weren't objected to, so they have to be dealt with also, not just the 6.
Okay, so.
They asked for the rest of them too. I have no problem with the rest of them.
Okay, other than the ones that you had circled
Yeah.
and we talked about. Okay, so let me just ask the board, so Matt had identified 6 and we focused on those. Were there any others that were of concern to any of the board members that Matt had not otherwise raised? Okay. So, Mike, is this a motion and a vote?
Yes?
Okay. So it seems to me, and I'm kind of talking out loud,
I think it would be easiest, given that there's no objection to a variety of these things that focus to the 6, it would be a motion to deny those items of the 6 that you would want to deny, and the balance would be granted.
And they also gotta clarify the number of seats on the plans.
Yeah, that would certainly be a condition of any action I would propose. Let's,
So can I just ask a question, Mitch?
Yeah.
So like C24 and like C25, so Matt has no issue with them now, but if they were to give us a plan, like say that, you know, had 50 seating or whatever, then that would kick in, correct? That they would have to supply us then the list of variances that they're requiring? As of now, the way it stands, he's saying it's okay, but,
That's correct, and the
Okay.
statute does provide that if at some point in the future you determine that you need additional information, you're entitled to require
okay, I just
that.
wanna make sure, okay,
Even if you waive it, something comes up, you
Okay.
have to provide it to you.
okay.
is
Well,
it,
can't you just, like, you could pass those based on application with 19 sheets? If the application changes, then those, then we can go back to these, so you have a buffer.
Well, my problem with that is that I think I see more than 19 seats.
Well, I mean, right now, it says 19.
There are 4 tables shown on the plan with 4 seats at the table.
That's 16 right there.
That's 16. There are 3 bar stools at one side, that's 19. There are 3 bar stools on the other side, that's 22. And then there are 4 tables in the lower seating area.
They don't show
they-
tables on lower
They,
seating
they
area.
took those away.
Oh, it's on the plan I saw.
Oh. I
yeah,
see
so
that.
this,
So
Now,
Yeah, and I didn't see the other one.
I didn't see that, where'd that come from?
The original one they submitted,
standing.
So then I guess it's
Yeah.
not seating area anymore.
but it still says
Well, what is
seating
it?
area. That was-
They call it
yeah.
sitting area, I don't
Well,
know.
then we need to know what seating is
And now
gonna be
the band is gone, what's happening in that corner?
Right, all questions I expect will be part of that site plan.
There should be a new site plan
Conversation.
addressing all these things.
So if the board is inclined to deny those 6 waiver requests, and the applicant submits, for example, the survey and the landscape plan, you still have to determine if those submissions are satisfactory for completeness.
That's correct.
Okay, so it doesn't mean we just go right to the hearing, it still means there's some
After
procedural
we
work.
submit, and I see everything that we asked for, I deem it complete, and we schedule a public hearing.
Okay, or it's not
Or if
satisfactory.
there's something missing, they may come back here again, I don't know.
Well, I think you could have time between that, you could submit to you, and then you
They
review,
could.
and then you back and forth, and then, when it's ready, then you come,
Right.
right? Instead of keep coming and nothing happening,
I've been asking about the
right?
number of seats since this came in, I just keep not getting an answer, I don't know what's going on.
That's okay, that's what we're gonna flesh out in this process. So here's what's bugging me, and feel free to tell me, yeah, that can't happen, sort of to Mike and Matt. So we grant the waivers for the 20 items, I didn't count them, and we deny them for the 6. My concern is that, are there other waivers that are created by denying the 6? So, I might be poking at nothing here.
You
No, I
waive-
agree.
You waive those things, during a hearing, something comes up, you can still ask for it.
Why can't we just look at it as an all or nothing? Do
Yep.
everything or do nothing?
I think that's also my perspective
Yeah,
on
that's
this.
what I think too.
Don't piecemeal it, just get everything ready, and you come one day.
When they resubmit, if I get, let's say, 5 out of 6,
It's
I may send them to you guys,
change of use, new
Anyway, you guys
application,
can
let's go through the
discuss it at the
whole,
public hearing, yeah.
yeah, let's
Okay.
go through all the paperwork that's required,
Yeah.
no waivers.
I just need more paperwork.
Well, if we, but
Well,
if
you
we-
say everything, even the things that have nothing to do with the site plan you want, like map filing and things that have nothing to do with an application such as this.
And that just comes up as blank.
Well, then we need a waiver.
Yeah, the map file doesn't, a lot of stuff don't even apply here, I'm not even sure why they asked for a waiver, to be honest.
Well, only 'cause it's on that
It wasn't
checklist.
list,
Okay,
anyway.
if-
It is not applicable, so.
I think when you satisfy the engineer's perspective, and we have, the correct application, those waivers, he stated already, they're not gonna be in play. and the application can go just the whole thing.
Can I make this easier for everyone? Because we'll spend an hour going back and forth on this. I understand there's 6 items that there's no way you're granting a waiver for, right? So rather than give us piecemeal waivers on these other items, let us get Matt the 6 items he wants, and then let him issue a new report, and if we have to come back for
If I
waivers,
go 6, I'll write it complete and send you here.
then,
You still need a site plan as to what's going on in the interior.
There is a site plan, but it's a minor site plan right now.
But I think the applicant's is got an interesting suggestion on the table. The only thing that the board is being asked to do, the way the applicant's rephrasing it, is let's just take action on the 6 that Matt has identified as problems for today. We're not granting anything, we're not granting the others, we're not allowing the others. We're
I
focusing,
think it's a little different than that.
is that what,
I think
Yeah,
Mr. Alfieri is saying. that
Don't
they're
do
gonna-
anything.
They're gonna withdraw their request for
Right.
waivers.
don't do
They're
anything.
gonna
This is-
withdraw their request now.
that
They're gonna
is
go back.
way simpler than I even heard. Walk away.
My job is to try and make things simple where possible.
But if the site plan comes in with more sheeting, or they decided to do something, and the parking, and this and that, and the lighting, and all that stuff happen, it can trigger other waivers that's, we're gonna grant waiver to it, and then
And
that can trigger something else.
That's why the applicant's proposal simplifies that. There, if I'm hearing, maybe I'm not hearing you correctly at all this time tonight, but if I'm hearing you correctly, it's, hey, sit tight, don't do anything. We're going to attack the 6 problems and then come back.
Yeah, because we have to hire an engineer to do, or a surveyor, we have to hire an engineer to do the EIS and the landscape plan and the lighting plan, and we'll deal with Matt's other concerns, and we'll submit a full resubmission, and then we'll see where we are.
Okay, and you've obviously, although we're not gonna, it sounds like we're not gonna take any formal action, you've heard
Correct.
the board's concerns, they are informal concerns as to identifying the seating area and what's happening there.
Understood.
Okay, so that question will be there unless you
No, we'll deal with it.
wrap it up.
We'll deal with it. Okay, so, there's nothing more for you to do or me to do. Good night.
All right, good night, thank you. That was simple.
That was the bathroom.
Okay. Danielle, I have to cheat off the mic because you didn't give me the second page of the. No, so weird. Oh. I'm just, sit down, I'm just messing with you. Oh, boy. We're giving Ken all kinds of material now.
What does he need?
All right, no worries.
What do you need?
Wasn't as bad as when I called you the wrong name
What do you
last
want?
time.
I usually call it Pam.
I'm so focused on not doing that. Get in my head. All right.
No, yeah.
All right, next application before the board is JLE LLC, Block 20, Lot 3.13. Is there someone here on behalf of the applicant?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, board professionals and public. Kenneth Pape of the firm Heilman Pape on behalf of your applicant.
Mr. Chairman, this is a continuation hearing, so no notice issues involving the hearing. The board did conclude the application at its last meeting, and at the conclusion of that meeting, the board invited questions from members of the public, so that the applicant would be able to respond to them at this meeting, because we were running out of time last meeting, so we allowed them to get the questions out. I have those questions from the transcript. I don't know if Mr. Pape wants to address them first, or at some later point during the presentation.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, what we did in March was present the testimony of the of the sound expert. And there came a moment where we were getting late in the evening, and that we came to an agreement that we would stop his testimony, although he stated that he found a pause place in his testimony, but he had not completed it. And we would invite the public to participate in the hearing. no examination of the witness because he was in the middle of his testimony, that we would return and continue his testimony. There was guidance from your sound expert that ambient sound testing would be valuable to all. The intention this evening was to present his testimony. I believe it will be responsive to a number of the concerns that were raised. Present his testimony, including the ambient sound testing that he conducted. And at the conclusion of his testimony, the true conclusion, he's then available for the board's professionals, the public's examination. And then we intended to go to the second witness, and I believe I only have 2 witnesses this evening. The second witness is the planner to conclude the presentation.
Okay, Danielle, did you have something?
I just wanted to put on record that all members that are present this evening were either at all previous meetings or have reviewed the record and signed certifications that they have reviewed those records, so they're eligible to vote on that.
Okay, thanks for letting us know.
Thank you to all who did that extra effort. Thank you so much.
Okay, I would like, Mike, if you could just give us a quick rundown of those questions where we were anticipating additional information. Obviously, one of them Ken mentioned was the ambient noise.
Yeah, let me go through this section of the
Okay,
transcript.
Mr.
Before we
Pape,
do
is that satisfactory? if
Yes,
we do
sure,
that? Okay.
absolutely.
Before we do that, I should note that we got through, I guess, Exhibit A82 last time. There are 2 new exhibits that the board has received. Since then, A83 is a berm and sound wall rendering, one sheet prepared by Mid-Atlantic, dated March 13, 2024, and Exhibit A84, which is an extension of time to act through June 30th of 2024. With respect to the transcript and the comments or questions of citizens, it started off with Mr. Cipriano, who asked why haven't we yet considered a smaller footprint. He's looking for why there wasn't a reduction in size of the proposed development. Mike Oliu asked if it came out that cut drawings were requested, so you can find out what you're going to see. Mr. Pape responded that we did provide them, so he was advised of that. He then was talking about refrigerators that were at decibel 49, and he said that 49 was described as a humming refrigerator, and he said, why do I hear cars and trucks from Route 33 and when I don't hear a refrigerator? So
Okay.
to the best he can respond to that. Then he asked if it's the case that the decibels exceed what's permitted, what is the penalty if there's a noise problem? He stated if state troopers come out, have a meter, measure it, say, wow, it's over the limit, is there a fine in place at some point, is there a penalty? And then Mr. Scott asked for a clarification at the next meeting that we're measuring the decibel ratings from the property line versus the house. And let's see. He asked what the decibel level is of the alarms for these backing up vehicles on the site. And he asked if we install meters and go over the levels, what are the fixes? And those were the questions.
All right, thanks for looking into that, Mike, so that we could have that fresh ahead of us. Mr. Pape, unless there's anything else, I'll turn the stage over to you to proceed as you see appropriate.
Thank you. So for the record, Ming Kong, who is your applicant, is here this evening, and all of the witnesses who have testified at all of the prior hearings are here. You have Louis Sugner, the engineer, Dr. Raymond Walker, our environmental scientist, Steve Radasti, the architect, and so Ben is going to testify, Louis, and Scott Kennel, our traffic expert. They're all here. If there comes a point where the board has further examination of them, they're all here and prepared. So with your permission, I'll return to Mr. Muller. Mr. Muller was qualified as a sound expert. His credentials were on the record. He's sworn, he's under oath, and he began his testimony, actually spent a good part of the evening presenting his testimony. By way of summary, we had asked him to identify where we had residential receptors and what steps had been taken to address those residential receptors. And you'll recall we had residential receptors to the east, to the west, and to the north, and he had gone through how each of those was addressed in the applicant's design. We know that there's additional testimony on those points, and then there is the ambient study that was conducted. I would ask that Mr. Muller begin where he left off and present his findings to the board.
Certainly. Good evening. I'm still under oath. Just to summarize what we talked about in March, we had presented analyses and a model to show that we indeed comply with the local and state noise ordinance. We had also, I guess, led that to somewhat of a discussion about the ambient. And so between that meeting and this meeting, while it was a little challenging dancing through the raindrops, we did find a stretch of weather. So we ended up deploying 2 long-term sound level monitors near the site. One of them, or let me do my global discussion first. They were deployed from Wednesday, April 17th, and we retrieved them on Friday, April 26th. So they were out there for almost 10 days. A little bit of the deployment and a little bit of the retrieval obviously don't count as full days, but definitely in excess of a week, and including 1 weekend, which is an important feature to look at when we're looking at the ambient. So the weather was also deemed acceptable for the period. There was no extraneous precipitation or winds that would cause the data to be misrepresentative. The first location, which I think was really the origin of looking into ambient data, we had placed that on site right at about where the existing golf course has, once you go into the site, it has our first row of islands for parking where the trees would be located. And the reason why that was selected is because that is an equivalent setback to the houses that we have been discussing in length that are behind the restaurant, and the whole reason for the sound wall on the southern part of the site. And so locating the monitor there, as opposed to requesting permission for it to be placed on the exact property, is an appropriate professional decision. We're basically measuring the presence of Route 33, which is the major contribution in the area, at what would be the same setback as the residences. And so if I'll just talk about those in individuals, so that before we go to the next one. Because we measured a lot of data, we were readily able to prove that the ambient is itself very dynamic. The daytime is higher than the nighttime. Every time a car passes by, we hit a maximum level, and then there are occasions where there are lulls in the traffic that the ambient's allowed to kind of find its footprint in where it would want to settle in the absence of that. The easiest way for me to present all that data so that we don't get bogged down by that dynamic nature is I looked at what was the average level across the daytime period as it's defined by the noise code, which is 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. And then I also took a look at what was the average level across the nighttime period, which was then 10 p.m. through 7 a.m. And when I look at that location, the results are as expected to be quite high. So the average daytime level was 59, and the average nighttime level was 53. So that information, I think, was a helpful piece of the puzzle, because in a lot of our discussion, we were discussing about where across the property line threshold was it meaningful to comply with the direct letter of the law there. To add another element, since our site noise is also dynamic, we presented last month or the other month about HVAC noise, which is steady in nature, but also the main focus of what we were discussing here was that we would have intermittent truck traffic and dock activity. And so those are characterized as the infrequent intermittent noise, maximum noise levels that would occur on site. That's the focus of my testimony and the focus of my concern, because those are the things that are outliers. Now, the data that was acquired for the ambient is able to be looked at in a variety of statistics. We can look at the maximum, the minimum. I tend to not favor those because they are the 1% or 0.001% of the data, and we can never truly be sure if that maximum and minimum are truly representative of the time. I did measure across over a week period, so I can find the data to start to become repeatable. But instead of looking at those extremes, what environmental noise evaluations typically focus on would be statistics that look at what's the intermittent noise in the area as well as what would be the background noise in the area. And so because we want to talk about our trucks, I also scrutinized what that intermittent noise from our ambient survey was. From a professional standpoint, we call it the L10, referencing the sound level that occurs 10% over the measurement period. So if you think of it as the highest 10% that occurs. I don't want to look at the max. I find that to be too extreme, and this allows us to look at what type of activity that what would influence the L10 would be your vehicle pass by, dog barking, aircraft activity, things like that are here and then gone, and then allow the ambient to kind of return back to a stable condition.
Is
So-
L10 your personal measurement tool, or is that an industry standard?
It's industry standard. Mr. Morello, your noise expert, is definitely more accustomed to that than you guys are. I'm going to make you experts, though, through my testimony here. Just want you to wrap your head around that we can look at different statistics across that data set in order to try to pull out what we want to compare, because I'm looking to compare apples to apples. I discussed average. Average is very simple to understand, and so hopefully you see that my data are heading towards support of the application. But even more so, I wanted to pull out and look at this intermittent activity to compare to our side intermittent activity. And so, again, I broke it down to day and night, and what you see is that they're a couple points higher than our average levels, as statistics should be, right? So during the daytime, the L10 at the location 1 that we've been discussing was 62, about 4 dB higher, or 3 dB higher than the average, and then at nighttime it was 57, so 4 dB higher than that. So what that gives you an idea of is that the difference between your max and your min and your average give you an idea of how dynamic the site is. So with our intermittent levels being 3 or 4 dB above the average, that shows me that there is a significant amount of activity here because the needle didn't switch all that much. And then what I want to present these numbers to in comparison was that when we had shown our model results, that at the upper story receptor for the home behind the restaurant, we were showing maximum sound emissions of 49, which we were showing that comply with the state and local code. But now with ambient data in hand, seeing that along that 33 corridor, the level rarely goes below the threshold for the state code anyway, that goes to support that 49 isn't as potentially impactful as potentially considered in absence of our survey data. The other thing to justify then was that we were extending our sound fence south to a certain degree, but then again had limitations to preserve site triangle and other things. So what we wanted to, while the code says comply at or within the property line, we understand that we're all dealt with feasibility and decisions to be made to apply it in an appropriate manner. So hopefully this data along 33 corridor helps to satisfy the concerns that were raised about whether we were providing sufficient attenuation for that. And again, my focus per the way the noise code is written is at the source of the receptor, at the location of the receptor, which is going to be where the people are sleeping at night. So that was why the focus of our study was on that location.
So can I ask you a question?
Sure.
So sound's exponential. It doesn't necessarily go up linear. So how does that sound add to the sound that the warehouse is going to be generating?
So when you look at the dynamic data that was acquired, there's highs and lows and everything in between. And so the site is also going to follow a similar footprint. And so you will ultimately shuffle those two decks of cards together. And so if the site was producing a maximum level at the same time that the ambient was, they would just be washed on top of each other. If the site produces a level during an ambient lull, then it would be more prominent. But
So it
all-
doesn't double or add together, it doesn't stack together?
It technically can, and theoretically can, but because we would start to talk about where is my receptor, and then where was that other noise source, we're not really looking at a situation where when you introduce a new development into an existing landscape that you get this accumulation effect. If you do, we would look at it in terms of average levels. Like what would be my traffic count, hourly traffic generation compared to the existing hourly average level, and we would look at it that way. Because otherwise, you're looking at just too many different things that are happening at different times to align those.
So simple yes, no question. Given that the sound ambient is louder than the state levels, does the site increase that even louder?
In a manner of speaking, yes, but no more than any other developments upstream and downstream of the town here have influence on things like that. Traffic expands over time in an incremental fashion because of development elsewhere. So everything, we do see that there is this slight noise creep. But what we would also want to look at, though, is what other applications by right could be developed here, and then what might that acoustical footprint of that be? So everything is going to increase in some essence.
So if this is a hot corner, why would we want to make it hotter?
If it's a hot corner, meaning what?
Well, your noise level now that's extremely high and above state regulation, your development is going to be putting on more sound. Why would we want to go even more disruptive to the residential
Sure.
area?
Well, in short, it's not. So what we look at is the way the noise code is written, and I find it to be appropriately so, is that everyone is required for their own contribution. So there is, much like your master plan looks at zoning and looks at other influences throughout the town, you do take into consideration the accumulation of that, right? Here's our industrial zone, here's our residential zone. And so there is an understanding of that. If everyone follows and complies with the noise code per application, then there is going to be some sort of a gradual increase of it, but that is deemed acceptable with everyone having their own limit to comply with. But also, I don't want you to think of it in those means either, though, because what we have is a site, is an area of town that's already developed, and we're just adding a different development. So we're not exacerbating an inflamed situation. So I don't think that that's an appropriate analogy to place on looking at the noise footprint of a specific application and how it contributes to the surrounding area.
So you're saying basically it's a different type of noise that's going to be added
Yes.
to the traffic?
Yes. I'm not. It's a lot of moving parts.
If I, just for, so we were asked to identify the ambient sound to.
No, I agree, and you did the job.
And we did. We still, the standard that we are required to meet, whether we take it from your ordinance or from the statute, is our responsibility. Providing the ambient was per your request. We did not use it as a screen saying we're on a loud highway, therefore it shouldn't be measured. We did it because you asked for it, but we still have a standard that we have to meet.
So basically, you have noise that's coming from everywhere that's existing, and you measuring, or you adding your mathematical equations or whatever they are to it that's going to be generated by the site, and that becomes this plus that, and then the sound barriers that you have to go and put around the site, that should cover the extra noise that's coming from that site.
Correct. Okay, any other questions on that?
That's in simple terms, pretty much, right?
Yes, correct. Correct. And when we talk code, we're responsible for the entities that are on our site. Any vehicle that leaves our site is then regulated by state and federal regulations and have to follow all of those ordinances. So the purview of the board, we're looking at the development of this property and introducing something new or different on it, and then how is that impacting the off-site receptors.
So let me ask you this question. Your monitors were near 33, I'm assuming.
Well, it was set back a couple hundred feet, equivalent to where the dwellings are.
So you're saying from Arrowhead Way, the sound decibels from the highway was measured at around the mid-50s?
We didn't get to Arrowhead Way yet.
Oh.
I'm only halfway done,
Okay,
I
got it.
guess.
Okay, that's-
But we're talking about what set off the need for the ambient. In my mind, at least, was we were discussing the overflow of the sound across the property line, and we had reported that we might have 51, 52s, and I had interpreted that there were concerns over that, despite me saying I thought that.
So what you've set up now is pretty much the Dukett's Corner area?
Correct.
Okay, got it.
And
Correct.
now I'm with you.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, me too.
Okay.
We were confused.
Sorry, if we had a roadmap, then it would be a little bit more clear.
Now, how are you measuring the sound that's coming out from the property, like the assumption? You do it as like 50% that's gonna be occupied with, like, we have 96 docks, right?
96 what?
I think there's 96 docks over here?
Yes.
In this property, right?
Correct.
So the trucks are coming in, the trucks are gonna be idle, the trucks are gonna be, parked and this and that. So what do you base it on? Like, you base it on how many trucks, what's happening? How do you measure that?
Yeah, a little bit of everything, quite frankly. So we know that there are stationary elements such as HVAC. So in our Cusco model, those are relatively easy to conceive because we have a 25-ton rooftop unit that's
Right.
placed on there,
But
and
they're staying in
it
there.
purrs, right? For the dynamic aspect of the site, because the codes are relative to thou shalt not exceed, right? It's a maximum driven code.
Right.
I looked specifically at those elements that cause maximum sound levels to occur, right? And among them are not idling trucks. It's our backup alarms, air brakes, coupling to coupling. We looked at trucks driving around the site. And when we look at how the site flows, because trucks come and trucks go, we're able to say, well, at any time, a truck in this position on the site is going to generate maximum levels of this, and that's what we compare to the code to take a conservative element.
And then you add a factor of safety on top of that, and then you design whatever you need to design. for
Yeah,
that.
there are factors of safety that are sprinkled in there.
So do you want to move on to the next
Sure.
quadrant? Yeah,
Yes.
okay, thanks.
Okay, so while we were there, we also deployed a second monitor, and that one was on the Arrowhead Way cul-de-sac. So it was off our property, but it was at the eastern edge of the cul-de-sac there to get the other area of concern, which was the existing residential neighborhood to the northwest. There are clearly elevation differeces that community benefits from because you're hard pressed to see 33. You can hear it, but there's a lot of topography between there and here. So that, and considering the fact that we were substantially further away from Route 33, we obviously measured lower levels. So looking at them in the same context as I just described for our southern location, our average daytime level was 51, and the average nighttime level was 42. But then also looking into closer detail for what our intermittent noise was, our daytime L10 was 53, and the nighttime L10 was 45. So what we then compared was that with an existing intermittent presence in the community of 45, and I went back to look at what we had modeled, and we were showing that on-site truck activity was going to produce maximum levels of 47 there. So while we have an ambient that is slightly below on average to an intermittent noise source on site, we do fully comply, and the 45 to 47 is close enough that my conclusion is that there's no negative impact from that, and that there's not going to be, a range of solicited complaints from activity here. It's going to blend in with things in the area, certainly be audible at times. A lot of that's going to depend on whether we're in a lull or not. But if you also recall from my testimony back in March, we had discussed that despite the number of docks that are present, that the traffic study, when we scrutinized that there were 65 trucks per day planned, and that there were 50, let me give it the right number here, 57 across the daytime hours and 8 during the nighttime hours. And that is based on the Institute of Transportation Engineers data on how traditional warehouses operate, and they run a continual log every time an addition comes out. They are taking existing sites and surveying the distribution and breakdown of those. So I'm looking to those for guidance for a site that we currently have as speculative, because we don't know what's going to be there. But these numbers are being used to say this is what a general warehouse operation consists of. And that's what I see across other operations that we then know about, which is why those data become correct, or understand.
Refresh my mind, what is the nighttime state?
The nighttime state
maximum?
ordinance is 50 but you have a provision that really makes it 49.
Out of curiosity, what do your statistics show for like over weekend?
So the weekends,
Was there a drastic change?
it doesn't too much. It will for certain areas that have a core focus on business and commerce, because what you see then is that on the weekend, no one's going to work, but they're going to their food store and they're going and run errands. So Route 33 being the major contributor here doesn't completely change dramatically over the weekend.
Anything else on this topic? Do you want to continue?
Sure. So let me try to touch on a couple of the questions that we had collected. I tried to take notes, so I might have missed one, but the first one that I got was, why would we hear the cars from Route 33, but not a refrigerator? A lot of my my reference of what does 49 sound like, and discussing that as being 3 feet from your refrigerator at night, that's to represent the magnitude that you would hear. And I think that when we look at our ambient data, it is in fact representative, right? If you go outside in the cul-de-sac of Arrowhead Way, you're going to hear levels that are roughly in the mid to upper 40s, similar to the strength of that we were representing. I was trying to give an identifier for what hitting that code limit is really impressioned by. There was a question again about the measurement at the property line of the house. I talked about that in some of my testimony tonight as well. The letter of the law says that these limits must be met at or within the property line. I believe that the or is put in place because it isn't just once you cross the property line, that we have an issue here. I think, I know so that we have several situations such as a flag lot. We have areas of a property that are inaccessible or undeveloped that shouldn't be held to the firm scrutiny of that exactly at the property line. We also want to look at opportunities to look at an upper story that's set back from the property line. So the code language is written so that it can accommodate the variety of conditions that we might receive in the field. But based on my experience with the enforcement element of it, is they find who is the complainant, they go and investigate, they say where's the issue, and they measure that as such. So despite there being a initial discussion of property line, that's how it is written and then followed up on by enforcement. So I use it in a manner that is representative of being in using it in a real world environment.
So getting back to the question of enforcement, what can be done if the numbers are egregious from your predictions?
Sure. So we've already discussed, and as part of your professionals report, we are committing to doing a post-occupancy noise test.
Mm-hmm.
And so of the things that could be done, there's a wide variety. A lot of them really depend on what the cause of the issue is. I've been involved in projects, complaints generally come not associated with the projects that I'm involved with. Not that I'm that good, but I'm saying that that's how we would try to head those off before they happen, right? So complaints that I've come in to remediate where they arranged for garbage to be picked up at 6 a.m. And that really wasn't something that should have been done. Somebody had a great idea and said, this is how we can fit it in. And so the solution there was move garbage to the mid-morning, right? Don't do it on on the weekends, things like that, that might be administrative controls. If the problem was potentially that that the levels in the model weren't quite representative, my goal is to make sure that doesn't happen, but let's say they were, then we would want to see what the reason was. Did we not develop the grading in the same way? What was the difference there? And then what could be done with it? Sometimes those solutions are harder. It's going to be very hard to put more height on the barrier. So the answer there might be that we administratively work it so that we take that offensive noise source and we move it to a less sensitive time. Those are the types of things that we might look at. If there was some sort of concern to the northwest where we put a large berm, there we might be able to entertain, what if we put an 8-foot solid fence on top of that? So those would be the things that we could look at to further enhance the mitigation that is currently proposed, which is already robust too. But there would be a lot of options. We'd have to figure out what the best one is. And my primary focus would be on who's complaining and about what. If it's about backup alarms, which was going to be my next question here, there are a variety of there's different backup alarm technology. So if I answer this question about the backup alarms in my response to that, I'll just keep expanding here. Backup alarms are...
Before you do that, the noise ordinance, Millstone's noise ordinance, which is 3-12, includes the fines for violations, and it's $3,000 per day per event. We're violating the sound ordinance in town.
Okay, so, which is fine, but I want to maybe put some words in your professional's mouth, as opposed to saying I'm not doing that. So Jeff's point is, put some words in your mouth too. Jeff's point is 3 years from now, you guys are built out, everything's rolling, trucks are doing what they're doing, and all of a sudden the neighbors say, hey, that sound meter I got from Home Depot that was saying 45 for the past 2 years, now it's going 62. What the heck? He calls the zoning officer, the state trooper, you get a fine. But that's not the remedies you just told us. You, in my way of thinking, my selfish way of thinking, you volunteered that no, if there is that glitch, the applicant will remain available to be part of a solution, whether it's any of the several things you mentioned. Is that what you were saying? Because that's what I was hearing.
Sure. So I was not specifically putting my client up for that. If he wishes to agree to it, with I think that is in the best interest anyway. But what the fine is just a temporary situation. If you get fined and then the next day it doesn't happen, then there's no remediation that needs to occur. But in most conditions, if there is a complaint, it's going to be continued. This isn't the same as when you respond to a house party and we say turn the music down and break it up, and then that goes away.
Right.
If we had a commercial or industrial use that was routinely doing something it shouldn't, but I also want to contend that if somebody who never was at the site before came and did something they weren't supposed to, that's going to be a one-off and is not likely to elicit complaints and is not likely to result in violation and enforcement. So for the things that I discussed as, hey, we have a noise complaint here, we need to figure out how to do it, firms like myself are brought in then to say, we can't pay $3,000 a day. We say, board, we need to solve this, and here's our approach. And then if it's a more barrier, then we're before the planning board again to get approval for that. There becomes an exchange with the town engineer and the parties involved to say, here's our path forward, right? And sometimes there's a temporary halt on the financial burden because we are working towards this. It might not be able to be turned off like a light switch.
So, as I would try to put some structure to that, if the board were to move favorably towards this, that might be something, and Ken and I'm asking more than saying, part of a developer's agreement that would have some kind of ongoing opportunity for redress if something went outside of what we're thinking about tonight.
If I may respond, I did not want to interrupt Ben as he was going through the sound analysis, but if there were to be, if there was sound coming from the site that exceeds 50 at night or 65 during the day. And the first way of getting the property owner's attention is the fine, and now you've got his attention. And immediately you're going to try to figure out what's making that sound. Chances are that it's going to be where the trucks are backing up and docking. And what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to cease that activity that is violating. We come before you with analysis that says we're not going to do that. But the question is, what happens if it does? The answer is, amongst the things that you can do, is you can say that activity that's creating that sound has to stop.
But we can't do any of it unless you're here. So,
And when we were discussing the developers agreement, the last time, I brought up developers agreement. And I'll go back just a little bit and I'll go forward to answer yours. So in the developers agreement, which is always, your town's unique. You're the only town that I work in that does a developers agreement on every project. In your developers agreement, the township attorney goes through your resolution of approval, and everything that you've called, that Mr. Steib has called a special condition in the resolution, is then removed from the resolution and placed into the developers agreement. It becomes a permanent responsibility of the property owner. The developers agreement stays of record with the county clerk and follows the property. We had said in the developers agreement, we anticipate that because the landscaping is significant and important, that permanent maintenance of the landscaping would be in the developers agreement, not the 2-year bond, permanent. And because sound walls were a very important part of what we're offering to you, and there's a concern about their integrity and foundations and being the wind load, being able to handle hurricanes, we indicated that the entire sound wall system, foundations, all would be in the developers agreement as a permanent responsibility. Your sound expert at the last meeting said post-construction, there should be further testing. We accepted that. I believe it belongs in the developers agreement, that it can be at the conclusion of construction, it can be at any time that the town chooses to test it, that the property must stay in compliance. The state statute and the township's ordinance, there is no relief from the sound regulations. There's none at all. There's no one who can give it. So we're prepared to have that memorialized in the developers agreement and expect that it would be. Is that responsive?
yeah, and obviously, you know, the drafting would have to have some process where if this happens, then the jurisdiction remains with the board. The applicant would come back in a timely fashion, and we would work to fashion a remedy for this glitch that happened. Okay. All right, I just want to put a couple things together that I was hearing. You're back up.
You're back on.
Just to finish up the discussion on backup alarms, since and everyone is personal experience with that and their associated annoyance. But they're deliberately made to be annoying because they're supposed to be attention grabbers and they're supposed to be safety mechanisms. So what we have seen though over time is that, and I think most of, and I'm speaking from my personal experience, not professional for a second, but most of my experience with backup alarms is in a construction site where there's dump trucks and backhoes and the like. Those are what we get a taste of backup alarms from, but when you look at the over-the-road truck industry, we get a variety of things. So we do have some trucks that have your standard beeper. It's produces a sound exactly at 1,000 hertz, which is where our ear hears best, and that's why it's more of a foolproof way to alert any pedestrians or personnel that a truck is in a reverse motion. I do see about a third of the over-the-road trucks have no backup alarms. My understanding is that is completely legal. It's the backup alarm law that I think becomes most relevant is like the smoke alarm in the airplane, where you're not allowed to tamper with it. If one doesn't get installed, that doesn't mean that it's illegal. It just means that it was deemed that that industry. I think a lot of what happened was that industries started to adapt to it because that sounds like it makes sense, right? You're gonna have trucks backing up, but a truck court does not have the same personnel activity in proximity to the trucks that a construction site does. I don't know that the backup alarm is as critical for a warehouse use as it is for a construction application. And then the third one, which kind of comes in two parts, but there's been an evolution of the backup alarm in use of, instead of a single tone, but as a broadband alarm. So instead of it being exactly at 1,000 hertz, it actually gives some energy to the adjoining frequencies and ends up producing more of a shush noise than a beep. Kind of sounds like a duck a little bit too, but the purpose then is that it's just as, it creates the same amount of awareness, but at a lower level. The broadband allows it to blend in better with the ambient. And then we even see what we would consider the Cadillac of backup alarms that have ambient sensing features, so that it's only as loud as it needs to be in order to safely alert, right? We don't need to do everything in brute force. So in the course of our experience with warehouses, we see about a third, a third, a third. So a third of the standard backup alarm, a third without, and a third with the more modern ones. And so should there be an issue with backup alarms, we have avenues that you could potentially change that. For sites that get heavy trailer rotation, we will have what you call a terminal tractor, or a yard dog, or a yard hostler. They have several names, but they're the little cab that picks up the trailers and moves them from parking to the docks. And those that live on site, the tenant has full control over modifying that. So that is always a great first step, is to make sure that that truck that's backing up most prevalently on site has that. And it's not a costly endeavor, and it's something that really should be, it's starting to get followed through just by good practice anyway. So that's my narrative about backup alarms. We're not proposing a symphony of tonal backup alarms, but in my analysis, that is what I considered, because that's the gold standard of annoyance. And there might have been other questions then that I don't know that I had written down, but I'm at a stopping point now again.
Is that the conclusion of your testimony?
Yes.
I would, before, we've had 2 weeks off, and Mr. Kong has, in addition to the professionals who make this presentation to you, he has people from the market who have provided him with guidance. And one of the stipulations we can make, and I hope it's of value to you, is the north side of the building, the docks on the north side of the building, from 10 o'clock at night till 7 o'clock in the morning, we'll agree that there is no backing into those docks. It'll be a prohibited activity. So there is no backing up, there is no backup sounds that are allowed to occur on the north side of the building from 10 o'clock at night till 7 o'clock in the morning. There may be trailers that are docked, and from inside the warehouse, they may be loaded or unloaded. There may be trailers that leave, but there's no trailers that would be backing into a dock from 10 to 7. We're prepared to stipulate to that, and we're prepared to place signage throughout the site that memorializes that.
Right, but if there is, excuse me, if there is a trailer docked on the north side of the building and it has to leave at nighttime,
Yeah.
that yard dog has to back up to it, correct?
The yard dog would have to back up to it, yes.
And hitch to it and pull it away. So are you saying that there will be no activity at all from the docks between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. in the morning?
There'll be no backing up activity that would cause any backup beepers.
So would the yard dogs not have backup beepers?
The yard dog, as we had indicated earlier, would be an alternative energy, either natural gas or electric, and it would not have the backup beeper.
Okay, so that all trailers leaving the dock between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. would be pulled away with a yard dog and to a separate site and then hitched to a trailer, to a tractor, and a tractor would pull it away?
We anticipate that's the primary activity. There could be a trailer that has its tractor attached to it. It's sitting there with the tractor ready to move out. It doesn't have to back up to load. No backup activity with backup beepers from 10 at night to 7 on the north side of the building. I think that one would be a very easy one to monitor.
Unless there's any other questions from the board, I wanted to have our expert give us his rebuttal or thoughts on the testimony.
Certainly, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The only
Just
thing-
for the record, just restate your name,
sorry.
and you're certainly still sworn in and all
I
that.
am, thank you. Matthew Morello from Lewis Goodfriend and Associates, Murello. The testimony was exactly what we had requested in terms of the measurements that were done. The one thing I wanted to clarify a little bit, mostly for the board and for the residents' sake, is regardless of how the developer's agreement is ultimately, if the board does choose to grant this application, the applicant is bound to the limits of the state noise regulation from here until whenever they no longer operate. And that, if it's not enforced by the municipality, is enforced by the state, which is the county health office. The county health office also has numerous enforcement mechanisms where they can enforce fines. They could also have a stop work order if needed. So there would be an enforcement mechanism even outside of the town if the town doesn't have those resources of a noise control officer, where complaints could be driven to the county from the residents or from any adjacent neighbors. The county would enforce that, and the county would also have the enforcement mechanisms outside of the municipality. So whether they do the measurements and 3 years from now something changes, like I think the example you had given, Mr. Committeeman, the county would be able, if the municipality did not, to always enforce the noise regulation from the state of New Jersey, whether it's here or however long from now. And there would be enforcement in that as well,
But which county office is that?
whichever county we're in.
Yeah,
It's the county health office.
Okay, not the county engineer's office.
No. The health office of each county has been given when the Office of Noise Control, the DEP at the state, was broken up in the, I think, early 80s. Each county has a health office, and they're responsible for enforcing all environmental regulations, air, noise, dust, things like that.
Hey, Matt, do you know that person?
Yeah, it's,
I've heard a few names, yes.
it's Chris Merkel. I happen to be the liaison to the Board of Health also. Yes,
Okay.
Chris Merkel is actually our certified noise control for Millstone.
Oh, good, all right, well,
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I guess I haven't violated it, so I guess I'm okay.
Reference to that it also appears in your ordinance. Correct.
Okay, right, anything further?
Yeah, the only other question I had was, were there any changes to A83? You had said at the beginning of the testimony that you had 2 new exhibits. One was A83, A84. One of the things that, there was some questions by the residents up on Arrowhead about what the view was going to be over the berms and so forth. And I had suggested to the applicant, and I didn't know if it was on A83 or not, to have a section line drawn from the house through the berm to the building so that they can see in section drawings on the side what that view would be from those houses. Would they be able to see over the berm from the second-story window and from the ground, or would they be able to see the building or not? And I didn't know if that was in the drawing or not, but that was the only question that I had.
We don't have a drawing for that purpose. We
Okay.
had indicated that the top of the building, we believe that the cornice along the top of the building would be visible.
So we don't have any cross-cut views?
We had, during the hearings over the last year and a half, we had quite a number of them showing the berm and the landscaping, but we didn't create one specifically to identify just how much of the top of the building was visible. We anticipated that the cornice, the top of the building would be visible. And the building was reduced in height. Our original request was 32 feet 9 inches, went to 30. That's your ordinance, and we went to it. But more importantly, with Mr. Shafai had said, lower the ground. So we took 4.5 feet out of the ground, so we're dropping the building down into the ground. And we got to the point where the water table said you can't go any deeper. So we did do the 4.5 foot lower, we did do the 2 foot 9 inch lowering, and we did increase the berms. The berms on that side, if I remember correctly, were somewhere in the 16, 17 feet. Plus, we agreed to do the 10 to 16 foot trees on the top and the trees on the side. And no grass and understory and combination of evergreens and deciduous.
And I do recall you did provide what I called some line of sight drawings.
We did, and we also, one other thing that we did, we put the berm where we thought we should. You made a suggestion, don't stop there, take the berm all the way to the back of the property. So the berm is the entire side of the property, and it has all of those elements. You'll see the top of the building. You'll see the top of the building.
Those are my only comments, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Unless there's anything else from the board or the applicant, I would open it up to the public on any questions. Before we do that, I have a question. What's going on with the air conditioning? Is there any air conditioning? What? Yeah, just me. Everyone else is probably perfectly fine.
They're overly dressed.
Just say. Okay. Can you? All right, we're gonna take a 5-minute break, because this air conditioning thing is important to me.
Let's step outside.
My palms are sweating. What the hell?
So we off the record right now?
Yes. You're not warm. I'm good.
I'm comfortable too, but I have short sleeves on, so it might be different.
So
Maybe you do too, though.
maybe this side of the room is just comfortable, you're.
Are you okay over there?
No, that would be embarrassing. I'd rather just say I'm hot.
Is it on?
It says 70 degrees. I just
No, and it's actually not the minimum buffers to Arrowhead, just so you know. So the sound walls are not permitted use, they're permanent structure, they're asking for 10 feet where 50 feet is required in the PTC zone. 8-foot sound wall section is considered a fence, the fence can't be in the front yard over 4 feet, and then the trailer storage wall.
I say we
every day.
I went to the budget meeting, they used every
Yeah.
penny of that and
Yeah.
research.
No, no, good.
800, wait,
Good. Let's put it this way, this guy was as smart as could be. My thing was
They used
practicing out at
850.
University of Pennsylvania.
I didn't get any answer.
He did his medical school
At
at
the last meeting,
the University of Penn.
quietly said, what happened to this?
And he did his undergrad.
Oh my God, I just lost my words. This,
At Cleveland Clinic.
what do you call it?
They only
Come on,
accept
help me
5
out.
students a year into their cardiology program.
No, no.
And this guy got in.
For Board of Ed, there's when they go over budget, when they
I searched.
check
Well,
it, check it.
I went to 3.
Oh, talking about the audit, yes.
Yeah, audit, yeah.
That just-
And I got no answer.
I bumped into him by mistake because I originally, it was not an emergency situation. I was on vacation and I was walking a lot in Savannah. And my wife, and I said to my wife, there's something wrong here. I better get it checked out when I get home.
Oh, yes, he's
She
right.
says, there's nothing wrong with it.
Never
Just
got done.
keep up. And we're off like 8
Yeah, when
to
he was
10
running,
miles
yes.
a day. Every time I would get up ahead of steam, I would have a burning sensation in my chest. So the next day, so my brother's a doctor.
Like, he understands.
So I go to work, I come home from vacation, I go to work, and I have this same burning sensation comes back between the time I have to walk from my car to my office. So I compose a text message to my brother, and I say, hey, this is what's going on. He says, dude, you could be having a heart attack. Get to the emergency room. So I called him up. He said, look, he goes, you come to my hospital in Staten Island. We'll take care of you. I'll
And then
advocate for
everything
you.
is sort of broken out.
Who's the
Engineering
emergency room
services,
physician?
architectural services.
He goes, if you need to stay, you'll have it in the afternoon. We'll go home the next day. So
Nothing is broken
I
down.
disregard what he says to me.
In the
And I
same
go to
house.
Princeton.
In the same house.
And
It doesn't matter where it
Princeton
is.
says, you're showing signs of some problem with your heart. And let's keep you overnight. Stay on sedation. Okay. So the next morning, I go in for catheterization through my arm into my heart. And the guy's like, if I find a blockage, I'm gonna stent it.
But it's a redacted.
So it turns out I have a 100% filtration. It can't be stented. So he says to me,
Yeah, yeah.
well, he goes, look, we don't have an emergency surgical team here. I can't just be poking around in there trying to get through this arm. He goes, you can bleed to death. So he goes, we'll send you to Philadelphia because they're affiliated with UPenn. So I ended up in Philly.
And then he had how
That's
many?
how I met
It
that
was
guy.
like 24, 60.
And you know what I said to him? I said, on my interview with him, I said,
10,500.
after I had a long list of questions that he answered,
Keep working, buddy, keep working.
and how many of these have you done? Because my son's older than you.
This year, on his
He
budget
pulled his
now.
mask down with a smile and said, I'm 35 years old. And then he tells me, he goes,
Well, I sent you that. That was embarrassing.
over 2,000 of these things. He says to me, what's important to
What?
me is that you're completely comfortable with who's gonna do this for you. He said, so if you want somebody with gray hair to do it,
Is there an accounting
I
firm
won't be
that looks at
offended
it?
at
She
all.
says no.
No, but you know what this guy?
I bet you.
This guy specialized in
No, nobody-
arterial revascularization, no veins, only arteries. And then, look at
ice cream.
I was just thinking, I just saw it right away.
I could go get some ice cream.
Turn your mics off, please.
So Al stood up and said something.
All right, Danielle, we're back on the, okay, everybody. Thank you for indulging us while we adjusted the air conditioning a little bit. Come here, I'll snuggle with you.
Missing a board member.
Now that we're on the record, let's go for it.
We're missing one.
Mr. Chairman, we're still missing.
Oh.
Mr. Kobe.
You might not come back.
Danielle, could you see where our missing board member is?
Oh,
Within reason.
Probably outside.
Yes.
oh. Oh, I didn't know.
Still looking.
They changed the law on my 17th birthday.
You found it. It was hiding outside.
Yeah, take a nice drive.
Oh, excuse me.
Mike, we're gonna just keep going.
I remember that.
Aw.
Okay, but on advice of counsel, we'll have to wait.
Holy crap.
I want that in his permanent record.
You got it.
Danielle keeps files on every board member.
You can take another 5? No, thank you.
Still one, still one.
Further flush?
All right, so we are back on the record. Thanks, everyone, for your patience. So where we left off, the applicant's consultant and the board's consultant had concluded their testimony and received questions from the board. At this time, we'd like to open it up to the public who have any questions for the witness that has testified tonight. Please stand up and approach the microphone with your name and address. Although you may have spoken before, we'll keep it on the record.
That's no problem. Mike Olean, 7 Indian Path, Millstone Township.
Sir, did we swear you in previously?
Guess where I am, if you wish.
Sure. Do you swear affirm that if you give any testimony in connection with this proceeding, you'll be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
Am I allowed to ask you, folks, only questions? Still only questions?
Yeah, these are questions, yeah.
Okay. So, I'm obviously no sound expert, so maybe they can help me with something. If they're worried about sound traveling from there to Arrow, or there to Indian Path, even though Indian Path hasn't been measured, and it's only gonna be a little bit of noise, how is it up from Indian Path? I could always hear the construction at Showplace Farms, which is further. Back in the day when Showplace was operational, they would sometimes have parties or ceremonies in the summer, and I could hear what was going on there. Why do I hear Sylvie Concrete working day or night when they're not supposed to be at night, but they work anyway, and doesn't seem like there's $3,000 violations going on there. How is it I hear noise coming from further away, and I'm not really gonna hear noise here?
So I did not testify that you're not going to hear noise here, but.
No, I'm gonna hear a minimal amount of noise. So if I'm gonna hear a minimal amount of noise, if you move that warehouse a quarter mile away, I should hear less, or even no noise. But I hear noise coming from over half a mile away.
I'm not super familiar with all the other references that you made, but none of those sounded like warehouses. They were all industrial or event spaces. So without knowing anything about them, my conclusion would be that they were actually higher in level than what we're talking about here. I know there are other warehouses in the area on the southern side of Route 33. Are those things that you hear as well?
Well, when they were building Showplace warehouses, I could hear that.
But across the street.
Right.
And that's much further than that location.
We haven't talked about construction noise at all. If you want to talk about it for a short bit, there are ordinances that basically try to handle construction noise based on putting it to where the time is least sensitive. So construction can do what it needs to during the daytime hours, and so it limits it for the nighttime and when people would be more sensitive to it, but it is exempt from the noise code. So when you have things that might require pile driving or or rock demolition or things like that. I mean, construction can have some levels that are significantly higher than what we're talking about here from truck operations for day to day.
Millstone's ordinances do have time restrictions on construction activity. It's exempt from sound, but there are time restrictions on when it can take place.
And those restrictions will we incorporate into our developers agreement?
That's
As
fine,
eventual-
they're in the municipal ordinance, they're applicable to everyone.
Okay.
Sure.
It's my understanding, because sound can go this way, right? Now, you're adding another, up and down, okay? So you're adding additional noise, you're not gonna double the noise, but what you could end up doing, instead of being up and down, you could be up the entire time.
No, we're overlapping a dynamic source with a dynamic environment, and so they're not going to cancel or add to each other in a nice way. Like if we were talking phases, and you could have the cancellation of phases, or you could have the enhancement of phases, things are in phase or out of phase. Here, there's so much up and downs associated with each one, you don't get any kind of harmony like that.
To build on that question, I think what he's asking is, will the amplitude of the sound be higher than what it is presently?
No.
Why not?
Well, what we're all, my interpretation of the line of questions is that we're worried about the existing level being X and that the future level being X plus Y.
Right.
And let's look at, we had talked earlier about noise being logarithmic and not linear.
Yeah.
So let's look at an example where we do have two noise sources add together. If I am 50 feet away from one truck and it's producing 74, and then another truck pulls up next to it that I'm also 50 feet away, also 74, the receiver is going to hear 3 dB higher. So they're going to hear 77, and that's with two trucks.
But no, my point being is, right now I'm hearing one truck every 20 minutes. I may now hear 3 trucks every 20 minutes, so I'm gonna hear more noise. I'm not hearing the same amount of noise, I'm hearing more noise. Because when that other truck is not operating, maybe truck B is operating, so I'm gonna hear that. So I'm gonna hear more noise.
But it comes to you as a wave, which is why I was asking the amplitude question.
Mhm.
So as a wave, it's like this. So what I was asking, is it higher amplitude, which he said is basically 3 decibels
Right.
high? But it's not gonna be 148.
No, I understand that, but it's more consistent.
But the time intervals will be
That-
shorter.
What
That's-
that means is the intervals, instead of being an
That's
elongated
my
wave,
point,
it's
yeah.
a closer wave with more
Yeah.
amplitudes, peaks and valleys.
So there's more noise though. Regardless, it has to be more noise.
It'd be a more constant drone, I would
Right,
think.
that's my point.
That's what you're asking.
Yeah. I may be off on a number here, but you're estimating 58 trucks during the day, I think it was 58?
Yes,
And 7 at night,
8.
8 at night, excuse me. And the state allows up to 49. Right.
Sorry, that's number of trucks, and then 49 is the noise code. Two different.
7 trucks, what is the max, I mean, how do you come up with 7? What happens if one day there's 50 at night that come through?
Well, the focus of the way I took a by analysis, which again is one of the factors of safety, is it doesn't matter how many trucks are on site. Any truck on site would comply with the code, and so we don't have. If there's 2 trucks on site, we have an extremely large site. What we know of but the just distribution would be, it could be on the north side of the site, it could be on the south side of the site. You're not going to have 2 instances that are going to occur exactly at the same point and time to result in this, even the 3 dB that we talked about.
I understand it, but then
Okay.
why use a small number? Why don't say, well, we did it at 100? Because 100 might come in. It's gonna change what you come up with, isn't it?
I have one more, I guess, line of response for this, but I'm following the same rule that the traffic engineer follows in determining the suitability of the site. And the number that we're given to do those things is not a fair weather number. It's a conservative number, and it's meant to be representative of what the threshold, what the capacity of the site is. And so we're all the numbers that we're discussing are based on a spread of what types of users could be there, and we want to make sure that we capture them all. If a user comes in and is only daytime operation and has numbers half of what we're even talking about tonight, much of our discussion is kind of moot.
Yeah, but if somebody comes in that's triple what you, then
Well,
it changes things.
What we're testifying to for the whole application though is that the site would not be designed for that, and then that's not what we're proposing here tonight.
Right, and there's a manual that Mr. Scott Kennel, the traffic expert, relied upon to come up with those numbers. Those were not numbers that were taken, that were made up. They were, and the manual is the ITE, the Institute of Traffic Engineers manual. We use those numbers. The township's professionals use those numbers. And then Ben used the same numbers that the traffic expert put in the traffic report.
Okay. Next thing is, problem when monitoring the noises and the fines that go along with it. So, the noise is loud, it's going on, and I call state police, and they say, hey, Mike, thanks, we really appreciate that. But, you know, there's an accident in Hamilton right now, there's somebody in Freehold got a problem, we'll be out there in a couple hours. A couple hours, what happens?
Same thing that happens to all of us, like when I called the police and told them that I heard something, when they showed up, the something had stopped.
Yep, that's the problem. There's no way to monitor it.
I
That's-
think what you want to do is probably file a complaint with the township administrator.
I will do that if I have to. And then I do it the following week. And then they come out and they monitor it, and boy, it's quiet today.
Well, the township administrator does have a responsibility to get back to you with a
No, I
result.
understand, I'm not saying he wouldn't, but when he does, it's a different situation at that point in time. It's again, Sylvie Concrete, they seem to work at night. Are they allowed to? No. You know, but they do.
Have you submitted that to the
I was
township
just gonna say,
administrator?
have you complained about that?
The police have been called.
Yeah, but the police can't monitor.
The police can,
and enforce them
they're not
working
part
at
of
night.
code
Yeah,
enforcement.
you have to notify the township.
Zoning.
That's code enforcement.
There's not gonna be any, at nighttime, excuse me, you explained that there's not gonna be any backup noises here?
From 10 o'clock to 7,
Seven.
from 10 o'clock to 7, the north side, which is where you're pointing
Right.
to, there'll be no use of vehicles that have backup beepers during that time period.
So a truck is loaded here, and it's time for it to go, this trailer's ready to go, okay? You have to hook a cab to it,
If one is not already hooked.
If there's, if the,
even if there's not one already hooked.
yeah.
How's a cab hooked to a trailer without backing up?
If it would have to be hooked up before 10 o'clock. If it's not, then the pony, which is the on-site vehicle, would bring that trailer to the front of the building.
So it's gonna bring it all the way around to the front
Correct.
for a cab to hook up to.
Correct.
I live in Disneyland. The last thing I think I have is that there was supposed to be some type of rendering or whatever of looking out a second floor window, and there's not one.
I think they did provide those drawings earlier in the process.
I thought I heard earlier that they didn't do it, but they will see something. I don't think that's fair, that,
What's not fair?
unless I'm mistaken, unless I heard wrong, that they were requested to give an idea or a rendering or perspective of what would be seen out of a person's second floor window. And they said, we didn't do it, but we do admit that they're gonna see something. Is that correct?
Well, I don't-
Right, what we did was, the exhibits that were created were to demonstrate sound, not visual. That's what those were all about. I mean, seeing a warehouse is not a violation of anything.
No,
The
it's
sound
not.
that comes from it is, and we did say that we anticipate that the top of this building is going to be visible. Eventually, all of the trees will grow to a greater height, but we expect that the top of the building will be visible.
There are exhibits though from last year, 52 and 53, where they did do site sections from Indian Path and Arrowhead.
Did the berms change though?
The berms have changed slightly, but the
They're taller.
They're taller than this was, so this would be more of a worst case scenario. But you're correct, it did change slightly.
Any other questions?
No.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, please approach the microphone with your name and address. Thank you.
Anthony Cipriano, 21 Arrowhead Way.
Mr. Cipriano, in the event that you do get the testimony, do you either swear or affirm that any testimony you give will be the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I affirm. My first question is, if your sound receptor, when you did the testing on Arrowhead Way, was 200 feet closer to the property line, would the sound be more amplified, and by how much?
My monitor that was deployed was only measuring ambient, so it wasn't set there for code purposes, but it was at the eastern edge of the cul-de-sac on the light post, which is relatively close to where that property line would be.
Can you just confirm, and this is a map of the site property, where that was?
Right here in the eastern, right
Okay.
there.
And then directly behind that, can you confirm if there's a retention wall and the height of that wall?
Well, it would be in front of it. I had, the monitor was
The-
west of the
the wall around
retaining
the-
wall. Yep, there's a large retaining wall. I wasn't eager to climb above it. And so we deployed up on the telephone, or the light pole, as high as we could manually put it.
And I also invited you on my property, and you chose to go 200 feet further away from the site where the noise would be distributed. Why?
Well, so a couple of reasons. One would be that we're measuring the ambient. So 200 feet in a neighborhood is not going to change markedly what our results are. You're saying 200 feet. I'm not quite sure whether that is indeed the case. And the other thing is that the real thing that I'm looking to quantify for this survey was Route 33. And when we're saying that, I'm going to just use a round number, that we're 1,000 feet away from that, going 1,100 feet away from that road is not going to change the magnitude of my results. So if anything, I was measuring further away from Route 33 than if I would have to measure it on your property, and so the results would be lower than if I was in the rear of your property. I'm not clear how much of a vantage point you have for Route 33, but it's probably more so than what I experienced on the cul-de-sac.
Yeah, we have 60-foot trees, but we're obviously closer. So, my next question is related, now I just lost my train of thought, but they are seeking a C variance relief because they don't meet the buffer requirement. If this warehouse was reduced by 20%, would the incremental sound increase that we're going to experience be reduced if the property footprint was reduced? Not the property, but the building footprint.
Right. No, that's a great question. The answer is I don't know, and most likely not. We're also only entertaining this evening, is just a generalization, but the details of this application. There is a host of other applications that might be fully conforming uses, and the code allows for something to contribute 50 at night for the entire duration of it. What we've been trying to talk here is that we think this is a great fit for all of the other discussions that we've been having, but our HVAC is going to be well below that. It's going to blend in with everything in the area. That's not going to stand out. And that we're talking about these intermittent truck activities, which we've talked 65 a day, 8 at night. During those 8 times, we're going to have a level that's up to the code, but for the other 24 hours, it's going to drop down to where it naturally wants to be. And I think, in my opinion, that's a preferred use than if we were to somehow use up the entire allotment of the noise code, amount or quantity.
But you don't think the sound would be reduced at all if the property was significantly, or the building was significantly reduced?
It may or may not. I mean, it would depend on how it was oriented, the distances. I mean, even if let's just say, for example, that the building shrunk by half, you could still have trailer parking or associated docks that might be with the same geometry. So it doesn't necessarily put us into a better or worse condition. And I think that ultimately that would be that we would still have to meet with the same limits that we're talking about here. So it's an interesting question, but I don't know that it provides us with any better direction.
So there's the piece, and this comes up with the planner, but regarding detrimental impact. And if we're seeking C variance relief, I think this applicant would want to do everything in their power to mitigate any type of disturbance to the public, by perhaps proposing something that didn't require these variance relief. But it appears that they're only worried about ordinances and not the public residents surrounding. Thank you for your time.
Is that a question?
Yeah. No, that was,
No.
that, he said thank you, or, anyone else?
Michael Menino, 16 Dugan's Grove Road.
Sir, raise your right hand, please. Do you either swear or affirm that in the event you give any testimony in connection with this application, it will be the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Question to Mr. Pate. You said that you're going to shut down the north side of the warehouse at night. The south side of the warehouse, loading docks, face Dugan's Grove Road. Correct?
Correct.
Okay. So now, Sylvie Concrete is 1,800 feet from my rear bedroom window. At 2:30 in the morning, they get into their front end loader and they back up, and I hear one backup alarm. And it goes through all that footage with 80-foot trees as a buffer from my house to Sylvie Concrete. Can you tell me as the sound engineer that I'm not gonna hear these backup alarms at my house on Dugan's Grove Road?
Well, you posed the question to me, I can't answer that question, that's a question.
No, I said to the sound engineer.
You said, here's a
Well,
question
for the
Mr.
north and south side of the building.
Fine, it's your question.
No, we've never said anywhere along the lines that they would be inaudible. That what we've done is analyzed it analytically, and we showed that the limits are below the threshold that is required, which is also set up to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the public. So despite it being audible, it's at a low enough magnitude to not, elicit complaints and.
So sleeping with my windows open and waking me up as an alarm clock.
The noise code is set to configure for that. We're talking about levels of 50 or below outside, and so traveling through an open window, we're gonna get another 10, so we're down in the 40 range. And when we had talked about our study, we talked about regulations and code limits, and entities like the World Health Organization have done considerable research on aircraft flyovers, and we're below the limits that they've established as being, causing waking up at night and things like that. So the noise codes are set to account for those things and be protective of it. Will it be audible? There's a chance of that, absolutely.
So why wouldn't they possibly go as not operating at night from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m.?
Well, we have taken considerable steps to make certain that we meet the standards. The limitation on the back side of the building is one that we're prepared to do, a complete limitation on not being allowed to have trailers leave the site during the night. Makes the building unmarketable. That's not your problem. Our problem is to make certain that we meet the noise standard so that it becomes our problem and not yours.
But what do I do at 2:30 at 3 o'clock in the morning when it's waking me up?
I don't have an answer for that. We have an obligation not to create a noise that violates the standards.
So Sylvie has the same right also, and Sylvie continues waking us up in the middle of the night.
It sounds like that's not necessarily this applicant's issue,
No,
but
but it's
an issue that you
continuing
might
in this
want
town,
to.
and
Sorry,
phone
you
calls
talk.
are made, state police is called, and it just goes on the wayside.
I
The
would have
poor guy
responded
Frank
if
that
you
lived
left.
next door to Sylvie,
Well, as I said earlier, you're reporting it to the wrong
That's what I was
party.
gonna tell you, you are.
You need to report it to the township administrator.
we were told to call the state police.
Who said that?
Who said, yeah?
When we called the township years ago, they said it's a disturbing of the peace, you have to call the police. So-
Try the township administrator.
No,
Ken.
that's what we were told, so we did as we were told.
Because it becomes more of
It's a
a
code
code
issue, yeah.
violation.
Correct.
And that's the only way that's going to get resolved. Is the code enforcement officer go out there whenever this is happening and basically do a fine or whatever he does.
or take videos. and stuff.
And also, it was testified earlier, our expert sound engineer testified earlier that you could report it to the county health officer at Monmouth County.
Either one. But you
Okay.
might get a better reaction, I think, from the township administrator.
Okay, thank you for your time.
Thanks. Any further questions from any members of the public? No? Please approach the microphones.
Brian Scott, 19 Arrowhead Way.
Mr. Scott, do you either swear or affirm that any testimony you give in connection with this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Last meeting, there was a sound map that kind of showed a sound that was in the upper left, I guess that would be the
Northwest.
west corner. If we could just find that while I have a couple other questions. Okay, who determines day and nighttime hours?
The statute, the statute, the noise code spells it out.
So that's a state, that's a state.
And-
the
and-
state
and mimicked
makes it,
by
not the
the-
town or anything like that.
Mimicked
State.
by the
Okay,
local.
thank you.
They adopted the same levels,
Gotcha.
same timeframe.
To my knowledge, this is just a leeway into some other questions here. To my knowledge, the residential houses on the western side of Dugan's Grove Road behind Chowzu's restaurant are still currently residential homes and still fall into the parameters of this application, correct?
I don't understand the parameters of the application, but we consider them residential, yes.
Okay. Okay, so I think we've got a little bit of history about where this meter was placed. And I guess I want to defer to maybe our sound expert to weigh in as well. Would that 6 to 8 foot retaining wall affect any readings for ambient noise or anything being so close to where the sound meter was placed, being maybe 6 foot up the pole?
Are you talking about the meter that,
The one that was
on the northwest, up there?
No, the one that was on Arrowhead Way.
That's what I meant, the northwest corner of the site. Well, if he's measuring ambient, it shouldn't. I mean, he
Sure.
put it up high enough, and again, I haven't seen pictures of how it was installed, but the way that you described it, you know, if it's put up high enough that, you know, you don't have it obstructing the sound coming from the dominant noise source, which generally speaking is gonna be Route 33, then the ambient noise measurements shouldn't have been that effective, no.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next, would a neighbor's week-long landscaping project, the week of the readings, affect our readings in the ambient noise during the day at that time? Which would increase our average, which I believe you said maybe was 51.
Is that to me or him?
I don't care. You guys
How
both sound
how about
nice.
I field it because it's my data?
That's fine by me.
Yes, we noticed that as well. It was something that we were very in tune to because we had extended it for the duration of almost 10 days. Any of those anomalies are subsumed into the data.
Okay. What were some maybe minimum numbers to let the council know and members of the public, you know, what like the lower side of the ambient noises? I know we're talking about the higher side, but what are we, you know, on a Saturday morning at, you know, 7, 8 o'clock in the morning when traffic's at a minimum and,
Right.
you know, our neighborhoods?
Sure. So the minimum doesn't occur at 7 or 8 in the morning. By that time, the world is already awake, including birds for that matter. I have some in my house neighborhood that are always up when the sun rises. But the lulls occur maybe at 2 or 3 a.m. is generally when they occurred, and the meter dropped down to like mid-30s when that was the case.
Okay.
35?
And the reason I asked the question is I did go out and buy the, you know, I guess residential style meter, and I was getting readings of 33 in my backyard on my deck. So, you know, albeit we're under the limits, you know, if I get to 50 on my back deck, I think we're over the limits, and that creates a problem. Did we find the sound?
I don't
Well,
know
if
which
it-
one, there's several of them.
Yeah, it's the one where it was the click or clank air brakes in the northwest corner. I'm not sure.
Would you want to just throw your question at the expert? Maybe he's
Yeah,
got it
because
in his
I have
head.
a question about where the sound was placed seems pretty interesting because it was kind of tucked behind the berm. So, you know, I think we went with maybe a clink because it looks like it's at a loading dock here. If this was an air brake noise in this general direction, wouldn't this fan shift this way and go right towards the residences?
Sure, so
Sorry,
he's,
sorry.
I'm gonna put it into words, yeah. So he's scrutinizing where we placed our noise source and asking if it were to occur in a different location, what would be the effects of that? Did I?
Okay, so the one
Interpret
the
that
noise
correctly?
source that we're talking about was mapped here.
No, keep going down, go down to the second one, next figure. Here you are, yes.
Okay, so my question to the expert was, this noise occurred here.
Mhm.
If this noise occurred over on the road, such as an air brake or whatever, this whole fan would turn this way because the berm starts here. So the berm blocks this sound, but if this sound occurs here, what happens to that fan, which pretty much projects right into our neighborhood?
Right, so we looked at multiple, like, I'm only presenting you with the summary here, but we looked at multiple locations on site for various activities. And one of the things which we constantly weigh too is, what's the potential of that? So could something like that ever happen? Possibly. Is the site designed to or expecting that to occur on a regular basis? Absolutely not. So this is the entrance driveway here. We looked at driving trucks coming along here. I would not anticipate that there be an air brake or a backup alarm or a coupling to coupling to occur on this access road. What we see here is that with the layout of the northern docks and the berm that's placed, that sufficiently covers a truck in the northwest dock and the northeast dock and everything in between. So that was what this figure is focusing on.
And
If I may, we're on the record, I just want to make sure Angela has this. We're referring to Exhibit A81, page 7 of 10.
And I definitely hear and understand what you're saying. However, we are trying to eliminate any sound pollution, is I believe what we're really discussing here for the last 2.5 meetings, I believe. So if that sound does occur in a different location, it's going to cause a higher reading, crossing property lines, maybe even touching residences, which would put the site in, not compliant.
I guess there's a potential for what you say to be the case, but
Okay.
that's not what we're providing here. We're showing the site as we intended to operate. If there are outliers or things, there could be any number of conditions that might occur that either we haven't anticipated or that we are testifying that shouldn't be happening and that we would want to cease immediately.
And I think the post-closing testing suggested by Mr. Morello we could specifically have that as a test that has to be conducted during that post-construction testing.
Okay, I just find it very interesting how we strategically place certain
Nope.
analytics.
There's no
that are
strategy.
visible to people. You mentioned backup alarms. I believe everything you stated about backup alarms was mentioned in hertz. How does that relate to decibels?
Well, we're all here focusing on the audible spectrum of sound. And so that is from 20 hertz all the way up to 20,000 hertz. We don't hear as well the very low frequency and the very high frequency. We do hear very well at 1,000 hertz, which is why I had kind of introduced that topic into testimony here. It's not directly related at all with the magnitude, except for the backup alarm source is where that's primarily generated. But any frequency could be at any magnitude and come up with an overall level. Do know that the state and local code have permissive limits for individual octave bands to prevent a situation from having something that's exceptionally low frequency be tonal or high. So there are parameters in place to look at those elements.
So we do not have an answer about decibel level on a backup alarm.
I don't understand your question. Can you maybe rephrase it then?
You keep explaining hertz.
Mhm.
I'm not a sound guy. I don't understand the difference between hertz and decibels.
How many
and,
decibels is a backup alarm?
If
Okay.
a backup alarm at 1,000 hertz goes off for 20 seconds as a truck's backing up, what kind of decibel level does that create?
Sure.
Is it 100 decibel beep that's 700 feet from my back door? Is it a 30 decibel beep that's 700 feet from my back door?
Sure, so backup alarms come in a wide variety of types, flavors, if you will. They are regulated or sold and marketed as a sound level at 3 feet, which in my opinion doesn't provide much help for any of our needs here. So the loudest backup alarms that I'm familiar with have a rating of 112 dB. They go down to, they're in 5 dB increments, so there's like 107, and there's 102, then there's a 97. And so different trucks might be fitted with different ones. When we talk about our most popular, it's going to be the ones that are like in the 102 dB range. We look at the more modern ones that I was talking about, the ambient sensing ones, can go down to 87. So there's a considerable swing there in terms of backup alarms. But for this analysis, we use the standard backup alarm, which, if I wanted to equate it out further, falls under our model here of I think here we specifically said 80 dB at 50 feet was what we were measuring. And so a backup alarm falls under that umbrella.
Okay. And I'm just going to piggyback off another public question. If this building were moved east, if the western wall was brought in 50 feet and driveways were changed, would this entire sound map, you know, maybe completely get us out of all of these questions?
So the design of the site was done and looked at long before my involvement, but there are, in my experience with project design, they're considering wetlands and where we're trying to minimize disturbance of trees and how to optimize the layout and flow of the site. So there's a lot of things that come into play here. I mean, how could the site be oriented different? I don't know, but...
I'm not asking about orientation, I'm asking about the size of the building. If we took the...
Well, I answered the previous...
southwestern wall and we pulled it 50 feet.
The southwestern wall, can you...
If we took this wall right here and we took this back 50 feet.
Oh, the wall of the building, the facade.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I have sound wall in my
The
brain.
building, that completely changes the sound map and you eliminate every single public question. I'm not quite sure why it's so
That's
difficult
really
to-
not my discipline. They're designed. Okay.
Well, then I'll let Mr. Pape answer,
Sure.
because he's pushed back on every single thing. He's only made changes when the public have questions.
The responsibility of the applicant is to meet the standards. And we have spent, as this gentleman pointed out, 2.5, or I think it's actually a total of 4 meetings going over sound, demonstrating the steps that we're taking to meet the standards. We are meeting those standards on all of the residential receptors. It's not meeting the expectations of our neighbors. It's meeting the standards the sound standards that came from the statute and the ordinance, and that's what we have done.
Thank you.
Okay, any further questions for this witness? Yeah, sure, go ahead. Name and address, please.
Alyssa Cipriano, 21 Arrowhead Way.
Raise your right hand, please. Do you either swear or affirm that any testimony you give in connection with this proceeding will be the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Go ahead.
I have 2 young kids, a 3-year-old and a 6-month-old, and they have a bedtime of 7:30 p.m. And where their bedroom is located in our house is closest to where this warehouse would be. I was wondering if there could be a consideration for changing that time from 10 p.m. to a more reasonable earlier time.
So I'm going to answer the question in my jurisdiction. The short answer would be the code is the code. But what I would explain is that the code allows us to contribute 65 dB up until 10 p.m. at night. It's only after 10 to 7, we're talking about nighttime, that we're required to lower it to 50. Right? That's the parameters that we are dealt with any application that would be dealt with here. What we're proposing here is a berm in the direction of your house that's never going to allow the site sound to exceed 50, day or night. So that the nighttime operation, daytime operation, it's all moot. we will never contribute more than that. Legally, we are allowed to, but because of the berm and the truck, if a truck's here, this model doesn't care whether this is 10 a.m. or 10 p.m. But what I'm showing with this illustration is that this activity will not exceed the nighttime code limit, because in the instance that it does occur at night, that's what our requirement is. So that becomes the standard that we have to meet. So the fact that your children have an earlier bedtime, I don't think you should have any concerns over this site operating in a different manner that might change and affect them in a way. Is that?
Yeah, it could, some warehouses have restrictions where it's only daytime operations, is that correct?
There can be, yes. We also might receive a tenant that has that as their normal business operation. What we have designed here is it's a speculative building. It's challenging for, to absorb that we don't know who's going to be there, but for the projects that I'm involved with, the market, it's if you build it, they will come. And so the project goal here is to build a project that has the widest net that can attract potential clients. But we might get somebody who, I've seen an application for a 1 million square foot warehouse that's operated by a big box store, and they keep washers and dryers in there, and they have 5 trucks a day. They have 3 times as many docks as we have, but they just use it for storage. So we're looking at all these considerations that would be a concern to the public, the noise, the volume of trucks, but every application has to fit under that umbrella. So I'm looking at worst case. I'm not trying to paint doomsday, but we want to express that anything that comes here will fit under that.
I was just asking for considerations if we can meet somewhere in the middle.
I don't know that we've heard some concessions. In my opinion, something like that isn't needed until it's proven that that is an issue if it wasn't otherwise put in place. So we're assuming that it's a problem when it hasn't been verified that would be. So I'm reluctant to recommend constraints that don't have any proof of that being a detriment.
The fact that the means of sound attenuation is a berm, and the berm doesn't go up and down depending on what time of day it is. The berm is always there, always creating that barrier. So the 50 decibels is what's leaving our site 24 hours a day. Mr. Muller's empirical data supports that, and his professional opinion supports that.
I have some clarifications, maybe you can help me answer. In reference to one of the published questions, if there was a noise incident somewhere else on the proposed property, does that fan, I guess that fan does change, the fan amplification changes? So it would put,
let's call it the acoustical footprint of the noise source, yes.
So, okay, that's good. If a noise incident occurred, I think that one gentleman had raised a question, if a noise incident occurred in a different area and that fan changed pointing towards the residences, would we be over the limit?
For that specific scenario that we were discussing was if my truck was further west than what I've shown, it was doing the same level of activity, it could.
It could. So, okay, so in that instance, by rights, you go over that limit, you guys can be held responsible for a fine.
Sure, if that resulted in a complaint, that then, followed through with the verification of that.
I guess the point I'm trying to bring, I'm not trying to be a stickler on this, but it is very possible any noise-related incident on that land can put you over the limit.
Sure.
In a certain area.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. I mean, we look at situations like this, but we have to look at them in context.
I understand. I understand.
Yeah.
I just wanted a clarification. That's all.
Any other questions?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other members of the public that have not spoken before want to approach the board?
Well, I'd like to follow up.
Just name and address, please.
Yeah, Scott Demonte, 17 Indian Path.
Sir, raise your right hand, please. Do you either swear or affirm that any testimony given in connection with this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
So regarding Mr. Pato's discussion here, said that if it could pose a potential, and then it's up to who to verify that there was an exposure that's over the limit, is it up to the general public, the zoning officer, because it's a momentary thing?
Right,
You would have
we've
to
talked
contact
about
the
that.
code
Yeah,
enforcement.
so you're putting it on to the public to keep them in order, and
Of
I don't
course.
find that acceptable.
Well, they were designing a site that's supposed to be in order.
Yeah, right, but they have, as you said, potential to create an element that is over that at any moment. And it could be repeated. They could do it, get fined, come back, do it again. So why do you
But for the
allow?
idea that we talked about, I guess, before you got here, which is some other safeguards in the developers agreement.
There are other safeguards, meaning,
I'd be happy to recreate the testimony you missed, is that what you're suggesting?
well, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm like, it's just,
Yeah,
you know.
well, sorry
Um,
about that too.
Okay. So that's my point there. So I did miss a lot, and I just want to know, the variances that went through are being accepted. I read about them, I think there's 4 now.
We haven't talked about variance.
I haven't yet. Okay, do we have a time to discuss that?
I'll decide that soon. Thank you.
All right, so maybe I'll be back up here. Okay.
Probably. Any other members of the public that have already asked a question that want a second shot at this witness?
Yes, actually, I believe it's a sound diagram that's actually up one page.
Mr. Scott, why don't you just?
Oh, sorry,
identify yourself again?
Brian Scott, 19 Arrowhead Way. To piggyback off what Mr. Pato was asking about is the sound diagram that's up on page 6, I believe. Semi-shows what I believe that we are concerned about. Because if I'm reading this correctly, gray is 50 dB. That's my backyard, which is a pretty gray piece. And that's in your current modeling based on all the current stuff. So you are literally showing us that you are not going to be compliant based on all of your testimony.
So the 50 dB contour is actually the firm gray one, and that remains well off of the residential property line. What you're seeing there is 49 and 48, and the way the contours work in the model is that as it transitions from 45, which is shown in a bright yellow, to 50, which is shown in a solid gray, that there are transitions of color from yellow to gray.
Okay, so we're skating on thin ice, is really what you're telling me.
No.
That if I walk out my deck and I have a sound meter out there, any point during the day, you know, I'm flirting with 49, 50 dB.
During the day, it's a 65.
Sorry, at night, I'll go out at night, all right? So I just think you guys are really not taking into account any of the residential people around you guys.
Any other members of the public that would like to approach this witness again?
Yeah, Mike O'Leary, Indian Path. We go back to the other one, the previous slide. Is it a coincidence that this fan, if you will, just happens to be the most optimum for them? Because as you suggested, it's possible that a noise comes from a different location, and that shifts everything. And is it impossible that trucks aren't gonna make noise over here? Is that the way it works?
Well, I think the applicant's expert explained why he picked that location and why he believed that the noises would not be replicated on the curve of the access road.
He's prepared to go through it again if you would like.
Okay, would you prefer he go through it again?
No, it just seems to me that that's the best case scenario.
I think we should.
And we don't see a worst case scenario.
I think we should go through it again, because there was a logic behind, it wasn't looking for the best, it was looking for the appropriate. If you could indicate why you tested where you did and why you didn't test where he's suggesting.
Right, positions further east are better than what's shown here. So what we desire to highlight, if we're trying to do the highlight reel, is where are the worst conditions to propose. I'm not trying to present the best 4 and then hide other entities. That wouldn't be due diligence. So that the berm that everyone's been talking about just continues and gets more prominent the further east you travel on the property, only providing more shielding in addition to the additional distance. So we've looked at those, and they all fall under the umbrella.
And the location along the side of the building is not a loading dock area, but is a travelway. You indicate why you did not conduct this type of test in that driveway.
Sure, so the previous model on page 6 does show, in my opinion, this looks egregious, but this is showing what it would be like if a truck traveled along all of the elements of the paved area around the site. So this isn't a snapshot in time, but more of a time lapse, if you were to look at where the truck would go and then what sounds it would produce. So this looks much more intense than what it's actually meant to relay, but that is the best way to try to add some sort of a time dimension into a model that's extremely dynamic. The other option that we were looking to focus on would be putting it into positions where we indeed representative of the worst case position on site.
I think you earlier said you did not anticipate the coupling and those activities taking place in the driveway. If you could just
Correct.
make that point.
Correct. So the model that we're looking at here, which is on page 6 of Exhibit A81, excuse me, is showing a truck driving around the perimeter with a sound pressure level of 74 at 50 feet. When we looked at the higher events that will occur within the truck court, those are modeled at 80 at 50 feet. So there's a significant difference between those events.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions from the public? Seeing none, we'll conclude the testimony from this witness. And you have another witness or other witnesses?
You have another witness, and I want to discuss that with you. The next witness is Allison Coffin. She's a professional planner. Her testimony can probably be completed in 25, 35 minutes. Her direct, I anticipate the examination to be substantial. Much as I think every one of us was hoping that this was the conclusion, I don't think that's realistic if we start at 5 minutes of 10 with the planner. You tell me how you wish to go.
Right, and I while it's interesting to see an end, I do respect your evaluation that we've spent a lot of time talking about the planning testimony and the variance or variances associated with that, which will certainly have some conversation aside from the public, which I know because they brought this up and we've constantly told them to defer it. So I'm going to, sometimes I'll just make a decision, but I kind of want to get a little sense of the board, and the question is quite easy. Do we jump into it and it will go how it goes? Or is the applicant returning for their last witness? Danielle, where are we, what's our?
That's what we're talking about now, I apologize.
All right, go ahead.
We have an application for next month.
Yeah.
Big application already.
Right, but this can jump the line, right?
Jump the line?
Be first, ahead of that one.
It depends how long they're gonna be spending time.
To be blunt, I don't care about that. So there's another application, so they'll go after this.
It's a big application.
What is a B application? Does everyone know the answer to this? I don't know what a B. What? Did I say big or B?
Big.
Big. But is there for either one? Like Tom Hardy.
I'll leave that to you.
Okay, so when you were saying B, I was misunderstanding. Okay, I still stick to my guns, which is the tough love guns. Applicants such as the one in front of us, sometimes you are first, sometimes you're not, and I think there's an obligation to put this, in my opinion, to put this we're gliding to, this is the June hearing, that they're first and that next one is second, and if our professionals want to tell me that this other application has to have something special about it, well, that's what special meetings are.
I'm just not sure if when they come back in June, would they take the whole meeting or not? That's
Right.
what I'm afraid.
Right, I don't, and I'm gonna, maybe it's the heat talking, but I don't care. They take as long as they take.
Okay.
But the goal is, they have one witness, it will be a witness that has some items to cover that are important.
Mr. Chair, you see we have quite a number of witnesses that are here. When we return the June meeting with the planner's testimony, I'd like to know, is the examination by the board's professionals and the public of the prior witnesses concluded, or do you need those witnesses to be here in the audience?
My thinking is the examination of those witnesses is concluded, and what the board has concluded its examination, and the public has. Obviously, at the end of the hearing, we're going to allow the public, as well as the board, to comment on anything, and express those comments, as we've been keeping the items to questions, and I'm sure there's some passion out there that we haven't heard yet. So I'm comfortable with that. It might be, you'll have to make your own decision. It's
Prepared
helpful.
to do that.
Yeah, the engineer is someone that might have to jump on a topic, but bringing all of your folks back may not be necessary.
To me, the important question to ask is the examination by the board and the board's professionals, the public, of those witnesses concluded? I know that if any one of them were to testify again, it opens up all over again. I also know that there's a benefit to having your experts in the room to help field any questions. We'll make the business decision. I want to make sure that we're making one that was legally acceptable to the board.
Yeah, unless anyone on the board has any counter thoughts, the trend in the conversation for the moment is this application comes back in the June meeting, they are in the first position, it goes as long as it goes, we get to a conclusion, I'm anticipating, and the sole witness left is their planner, who we've danced around their testimony all during the hearing. Their other witnesses are not anticipated to testify, nor is the board anticipated to have questions for those other witnesses. So that's where this is trending. Does anyone have a counter thought to that, a different thought? Seeing none, don't stare them down.
No, I'm looking, you just asked, I want to watch everybody's faces. If there's anybody who has a problem with it, I want to know.
Yeah, they'll speak
because I don't want to
up.
have a problem when I'm back here.
Tom, would you be quiet even if you had something to say? All right, so I think you have the sense of the board on this, and Danielle, I will work with you on the other application. If I have to make a phone call and take the heat, that's okay too.
Danielle, what's the June date?
It's June 12th.
June 12th. So, for those of you in the public who have an interest in this application, the matter is being carried to June 12th at 7:30 p.m. in the same room. This is the notification that you'll get, and you've already heard from the chairman what we anticipate at that meeting. We anticipate the applicant's planner to testify, be subject to questioning, and then the application will be open to the public for public comment.
Mr. Chairman, board members, board professionals, all thank you. Good night.
Okay, thank you.
I'll check the debate.
Mr. Chairman, before we adjourn, I have a question.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, say it again. Oh, yeah, oh, sorry, I'm packing up like we're just going home.
We didn't adjourn.
Yeah, I know, I don't, right, okay. Clearly in a mood. Anyway, so we don't have anything else on our agenda listed. Is there any other questions or concerns that any board members have?
Yeah.
Jeff, go ahead.
There's a new set of stormwater control ordinances that are coming out of the state. McKinley, is that something we need to address as a planning board?
I'm sorry, we were looking at the agenda. Can you, Jeff, can you say it again?
You're required to adopt the ordinance either in the form of a model ordinance submitted by DEP
Right.
or that ordinance as revised as the town may see fit if you want more restrictive conditions in the ordinance. And that has to be adopted by July.
Yes, there is a time frame on that the DEP's
Right.
imposing.
So I guess the question is do we need to discuss that as a board, to see if we want to make it more strict?
You will have to get, well, you can do that and submit comments to the governing body if you wish. Or you will get, that ordinance will be given to you for a consistency review,
Right.
presumably at the June meeting,
It sounds like it, yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
assuming.
Mullen County's gonna look
And-
at it too, they're gonna make comments, but.
And you can make comments at that meeting as well.
I'm just wondering what immediate action we need to do with that.
Well, I think it might be prudent to have Danielle submit to everyone the draft ordinance.
Yep.
Take a look at it, know that, and maybe get your environmental commission involved, because that would be probably the most logical
It's
of your committees.
It's an ordinance that DEP requires, they keep changing their ordinance.
But I think
Well,
to
and
Mike's point, you can
and
make it
we
more.
did-
The point is, you have to at least adopt the DEP
Yes.
ordinance. That's the minimum.
the bare minimum.
But you can go beyond
make it more
that.
strict.
So if you want to look at the ordinance.
And we
then
have gone
do-
beyond that.
Okay.
2, 3, 4 years ago, when they first came out, we changed their regulations. They used to say if you disturb an acre, we made it half an acre. If you have quarter acre of impervious, we made it 1/8 of an acre. So
Okay.
we have made it more restrictive.
And I would recommend keeping
that's not
those.
changing.
Yeah,
I'm
that'll,
not saying keep those, I'm saying, is there anything in this new state ordinances that are impacting us that we might want to review?
We haven't
I-
really seen anything change on there. really.
I looked at it for another community. It seems very minor. There's a few new definitions that have been
Yeah.
added about motor vehicle roadway or something along the lines. It didn't seem, I'll defer to Matt, but from my reading, from a planning perspective, there wasn't anything monumental or
Going
ground
to
shifting.
every town and
Yeah.
everybody's just passing what the state told them to do.
The important regulations you guys have already adopted and like Matt said, made more
We have
stringent.
made already more stringent. A lot
And
of-
Matt's
a
office-
lot of people complain to me.
Matt's office did provide us with the sample ordinance where we would just basically fill in the blanks and also a little more strict version of it. And it was submitted. And
It's not strict, it's just longer.
yeah, it was more elaborated.
description,
I
more-
shouldn't
yeah,
say strict.
just-
An elaborated version
So
of
Mike
it.
is saying that, it sounds like two choices are, we get just some guidance from Matt at the next meeting and then share our thoughts with the township
Right.
committee, or we wait for the township committee to formally send us an ordinance to review for
You'll get
master
that at the
plan.
next meeting.
Has it
In
been
order for-
introduced?
They're gonna have to have
No,
you
they have
review it at
not
the next
introduced
meeting in order to make the July deadline.
Scheduled construction?
Okay, so that means the
Recommended
township
it, but
committee
we
is
haven't
going to
seen it.
have to take this first swipe at that and
The
adopt,
committee's gonna have to have a
introducing
first
an
reading.
ordinance.
Right, they're gonna have a first reading and then send it here for consistency review.
All right.
Again, we already have pretty strict regulations on stormwater management.
Okay, so then we'll see it at the next meeting for
One of the
consistency.
stricter than any town that I know of.
Okay.
So we need to come a little bit earlier next meeting, I guess, right?
What's that?
A little bit earlier next meeting.
All right, tough guy.
Talking about me.
You wanna sit over there?
Talking about me.
The meetings start at 7 o'clock from now on.
I figure.
I'm in if
I
everyone's
guess.
in.
When you come from New York, you never know, you know?
All right, anything else before Tom makes the motion to adjourn?
Second.
Yeah, all right, all in favor, say aye. Aye. We are adjourned, thank you.